Welcome back to Braver Leadership. I'm here with Ian Brown, and today we're continuing our series on the transition to leading leaders. Ian, in the last few episodes, we've talked about the unnamed shift, the identity lag, the mental load that comes with this role. Today, I want to get concrete. What actually changes when you step into leading leaders? What's different on a Tuesday afternoon compared to when you are managing people who do the work?
It's a good question because the changes aren't always obvious from the outside. Your calendar looks similar. Meetings, one-on-ones, strategy sessions. You're still making decisions, still solving problems. But there's this fundamental shift that's hard to articulate until you're living it. The clearest way I can put it is this. The line between what you did and what happened gets fuzzy. When you were managing people who do the work, feedback was everywhere. Projects shipped or they didn't, problems got solved or they escalated. Your team's output was visible, measurable, yours to point at. Now, you're managing people who manage the work, and suddenly it's much harder to see your actual contribution.
So the outputs aren't yours anymore in the same way?
Exactly. You don't write the code. You don't close the deals, you don't design the campaigns. Your managers do that work, or rather, their teams do. Your job is to make sure your managers are set up to lead those teams well, which means your actual contribution has become maddeningly indirect. You shape conditions, you unblock. You ask questions that help others think more clearly, all useful things. None of them produce a spreadsheet you can point to at the end of the quarter.
That sounds like it would mess with your sense of accomplishment.
It does. Here's the part that takes getting used to. When things go well, it's because your managers led well, and they should get the credit. That's the job. But it does mean you're permanently one step removed from the dopamine hit of we shipped the thing. You coach the person who coached the team who shipped the thing. It matters. It's important work. It just doesn't give you the same sense of completion. And I'll say this for people who are chasing this level, eyeing that leader of leaders role from the outside. The prestige is real, but so is the distance. You'll be important in ways that are harder to see, even to yourself. The impact is genuine, but it's filtered through other people's success in ways that can feel strangely hollow on a Tuesday afternoon when you're wondering what you actually accomplished today.
Let's talk about decision-making. I imagine that changes too?
Massively. You used to be able to look at a problem, weigh the options, and decide. Now you look at a problem and you're thinking, who needs to own this? What will they learn if I don't step in? How does this decision set precedent for next time? The decision itself might be straightforward, but the meta-decision, who decides, how much support they need, what you model by how you handle it, takes longer. Not because you're overthinking, because the implications have multiplied. This is where that feeling of mental crowding we talked about in episode 3 starts to make sense. You're not just holding the decision, you're holding all the second-order effects, how it lands with different managers, what it signals about your priorities, whether it builds capability or creates dependency.
So you're thinking about the system, not just the situation?
Right? And there's another dimension to this that people don't expect. When you were leading individuals, you thought about who's struggling, who's excelling, who needs development, straightforward enough. Now you're also thinking about which manager sees the problem this way and which sees it differently, how those differences affect their team's ability to collaborate, whether the inconsistency is healthy tension or a structural issue you need to resolve. You're managing the space between your managers as much as you're managing them individually.
Can you give me an example of what that looks like in practice?
Sure. You'll spend entire meetings doing nothing but helping two managers understand each other's constraints. From the outside, it might look like you're just facilitating. From the inside, you know you're preventing a misalignment that would have cascaded through both teams for months. No deliverable, no artifact, just shaped thinking and created conditions. You prevented a problem that nobody will ever know didn't happen. Vital work, invisible work, work that doesn't photograph well,
Which brings us to impact. How do you know if you're doing well when the work is this invisible?
That's the hard part. You used to know if you were doing well. Delivery metrics, team engagement scores, customer feedback, whatever mattered in your function, clear signals. Now, those things still exist, but they're filtered through other people's leadership. Good numbers might mean your managers are brilliant despite you. Bad numbers might mean you haven't equipped them properly. Or maybe the system's broken and no amount of good leadership will fix it. The signal-to-noise ratio just got a lot worse. This is the shift that catches people off guard. Your performance now depends on whether your managers grow, how their teams collaborate, whether they're solving the right problems. If they're building the culture you need, you can influence all of that, but you can't do any of it, which means you're accountable for outcomes you can only shape, not deliver. Welcome to organisational leadership.
So the expertise that got you promoted isn't what keeps you effective anymore?
Not quite. You were probably promoted because you were good at something. Good at the work, good at leading a team, good at getting results. Those things still matter, but they're not the main game anymore. Now the main game is knowing when to let someone struggle longer than feels comfortable, holding multiple perspectives without needing to pick one, translating strategic intent into something your managers can operationalise, recognising when a people problem is actually a systems problem, different skill set entirely. And here's the tricky bit. You're learning these skills while already in the role. With everyone watching, there's no practice round, no safe space to be visibly incompetent while you figure it out. You're expected to have credibility from day one, even though the competence you built your credibility on isn't the competence this role actually requires.
That sounds lonely.
It can be, and it's made harder by the fact that nobody really explains what you're supposed to stop doing. The hardest part isn't the new responsibilities. It's what you have to let go of. You have to stop being the person who has all the answers. Stop being the one who solves the hardest problems. Stop stepping in when things get uncomfortable. Not because you can't, you probably still could, but because every time you do, you're taking reps away from the people who need them.
And I imagine that feels counterintuitive when the pressure's on.
Completely. When a project's at risk, when a client's unhappy, when two teams can't agree, your instinct is to step in and fix it. That instinct served you well for years. Now it's your biggest liability. Because the more you solve, the more your managers wait for you to solve. And the more they wait, the less capacity you build. And the less capacity you build, the more you have to solve. The loop tightens. Breaking that loop requires you to sit with discomfort that doesn't feel productive. Watching someone work through something you could resolve in 5 minutes. Letting a conversation meander when you can see the answer. Allowing failure that's painful but not catastrophic. It's hard. And it doesn't come naturally to people who got here by being good at stepping in.
So what helps? How do leaders start to get their bearings in this?
I think the first step is just seeing it clearly. For many leaders, the moment things start to settle is when they realise nothing's broken, the role just works differently. The contribution is real, it's just harder to see. The impact is there, it's just filtered through other people's growth. Once you can see that clearly, you stop asking, am I doing this right? And start asking better questions. Where am I still holding things I should release? Where am I creating dependency instead of capability? What does good actually look like at this level? Those questions don't have quick answers, but they're the right questions, and asking them means you're doing the work the role quietly requires.
And for someone listening to this thinking, yes, this is exactly what I'm experiencing, what's the next step?
If this experience feels familiar, it helps to see where the pressure is actually concentrating. I've built a diagnostic specifically for leaders of leaders. It's designed to act as a mirror, not a test. It doesn't measure competence or tell you what you're doing wrong. It simply shows you which aspects of this transition are creating the most load right now. 10 minutes, honest answers, no corporate fluff, No personality typing, no bullshit scoring. Just a clear view of where the weight is sitting and what that means for how you lead. You can find it at braverleadership.com, not to fix anything immediately, just to see what you're actually carrying and why some days feel harder than they should.
Ian, thanks for this. Next time, we'll start looking at what to do about all this, the framework you use with leaders to navigate this transition more deliberately.
Looking forward to it. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Thank you for joining us on the Braver Leader podcast. You can find a written version of this episode on Substack. Just search for Braver Leadership. Catch you next time.